Okay, we're going to change gears quite a bit. We've gone from aerospace and video games, and now we're going to go for a deep dive into the ocean. How many people have been to the ocean? Yeah, all right. Probably a lot of you have gone down to Maine. That's where I work, down at College of the Atlantic in Bar Harbor. And being a marine mammologist, I work with whales, dolphins, porpoises. And so I'm going to tell you because, you know, we have to know what our path was to get where we're going. And then I'll tell you a little bit about what I do. Okay, these are some of the critters I work with, so you can go, ah, they're cute. Especially these little guys right here. Is this, yeah, these are harbor seal pups. This is a harbor seal, comes down from Canada, yay. Gray seal pups that are being born right now. Harbor porpoise, humpback whales. I've worked with humpbacks a lot over the years. So those are some of the prime suspects, and I'll get to those in a sec. This is my office. It's not too shabby. That's me out in a boat. Really good, you know, we talk about different skills to have. Boat handling skills, navigation, oceanography, all those things. There's STEM stuff that comes into even running a boat. And this is my office at College of the Atlantic. It's my building. It's a really awful view looking over the bay. And this is the office. And no, that's not a funny looking seal. That's my friend's dog who came in the office. All right. Me as a kid. Yes, I was a kid. And that's me in a tidal pool. That's Higgins Beach down in South Portland, Maine. With one of my older brothers hanging out in tidal pools. I was fascinated by the ocean. Just amazing. I think what got me were the tides. Tides would come in and tides would go out. And I thought that was magical. And that's still magical to me to this day. I also loved combing the beach for shells. And to me, they were like little treasures that you found on the beach. Now I find seals on the beach. All right, so that's me as a kid in Montreal. Yes, Montreal, born and raised here. My cat as a teenager. And so I went from that. So how does a Montreal girl go from being with my kitty and machine where I grew up to hanging around with seals? Yeah, cute little guys. So, well, you might say I jumped on a ship and went out to sea. And well, I'm only kidding. I did that later on in life. But what was fascinating was my seminal point, or moment, I guess, was in Cégep. And I did a course. I was doing STEM courses like chemistry and math. And by the way, I did terribly. And you know, you make mistakes. Don't ever be afraid to fail. You'll come. Just get back on that horse, dive back in, try it again. And that's what I've done. So I went to Cégep, and of course I did, because you have to do humanities courses. It's core courses. And it was called Animals and Men. It was basically wildlife-human interactions, and we studied whales. I'd never studied whales. To me, whales all live way in the deep ocean, not really close to where I live, but we studied whales, and we had someone come, it was the director of the Montreal Zoological Society. He came in and he showed a film, and there was no YouTube. This is 1974. There was no whale watching. And he came in and he showed a film about blue whales, and where were they? Whoops, let's go back one. Oh, I just killed it. See, I told you I flunked everything.
No, but technology.
How do I get that back? How do I go back? Oh, maybe it's that one. There you go. Too many buttons on here. Okay, so here we are in Montreal. They said there are whales right here. I'm like, are you kidding me? We have whales on our doorstep, right there. And really not a lot of people knew there were whales there. But there are, and of course, everything leads out into the ocean. And look at it. The ocean is 70% of this planet. I'm going to make a plug for the ocean right now. If you're really fascinated with scuba diving or running boats or going out to see these animals, go out on the ocean. It's 70% of the planet. And two things to take away from that. The currents, those massive currents within the ocean, they're the driving force for climate and temperature. The other thing is plankton. These are the tiny little critters in the ocean, the phytoplankton. That's plant plankton. It's kind of like the grass of the ocean. Well, they make up a lot of our oxygen. In fact, scientists estimate at least half our oxygen, but even perhaps as much as 85% of the oxygen that is produced on this planet is from tiny microscopic phytoplankton. So you don't need to study whales or work with seals. study plankton. I have a lot of friends who do. It's critically important. So don't neglect the oceans. We have to be better stewards of the oceans. And elder, our Mohawk elder, saying we don't give it enough thought, and it's easy not to. You know, we live inland, but we are connected to the oceans. All right, so what do I do? Yeah, that's better. I work with humpback whales. I went to Seton. I did that course. I went to McGill. Actually, I studied music for a bit. Don't forget doing music. And in fact, really, STEM should have another M on the end for music, because you need to know fractions to study music, right? And I'm sure plenty of you in this audience play a musical instrument. So I studied music, and then I came back to Montreal. I was all over the place in Canada, which was great, got to see my country. And then I went to McGill, and I actually studied psychology, because I was fascinated with behavior. And I ultimately ended up in animal behavior. So I went to McGill, graduated from McGill, loved it there. I worked for a couple of years, and afterwards, I applied to graduate school. And the place I wanted to go, there was only one place I wanted to go, and that was Memorial University of Newfoundland. There was a man there, his name was Dr. John Leon, and he was in a program called biopsychology, and he was known as the whale man in Newfoundland, because he disentangled whales to get whales out of fishing gear. And I saw him interviewed on CBC, I read about him, and I thought, I want to work with that man. I can do a graduate degree, so I could combine my interest in whales, which I always thought that would just be a hobby, but I could combine my interest with whales, bring in some science, and I could work with these animals out in Newfoundland. And probably throw in a little music on the side as well. So humpback whales at College of the Atlantic, we pioneered and developed a photo identification of humpback whales, looking at the underside of the tail. It's very handy that humpbacks, when they dive, tend to lift the tail when they go into dive. Not all whale species do that. And also, they have these unique markings. Well, we have no computer program that does the matching for us, despite, you know, CIS TV shows and whatever that always show everyone matching everything in seconds. It doesn't happen the same way for humpback whales. For years, and I say decades, we have been matching manually, and that's pretty tough. It's laborious and so on. We try and make it a little bit easier by creating these types and also subtypes. And now we do use computer-assisted software, and just as an example of a match, this was in 2015 in Guadeloupe in the West Indies, and one up to Scotland just taken last year, and that was the first match of its kind. So you get the idea. It's large movements that we look at. Surveys, I got to grind through this. I know I don't have much time. I do work, see, this is the ship I worked on. We work inflatables and doing photo ID. We do acoustic work. If you're interested in physics, you can fold that into doing marine mammal research. Genetics, we will get snag a little bit of tissue from a whale, and we can do genetic work and a lot of other analyses as well. That's in the evening. You have long days in the water. You have long days in the office or in the ship's computer lab as well, downloading all the data. So just quickly, marine mammal strandings, that's what I do. I look after the northern half of Maine. I respond to marine mammals. We work a lot with seal pups. This is a harbor porpoise that I rescued. It was almost up in Canadian waters near New Brunswick, and I rescued that. So you need to do a little veterinary care as well, and I work with veterinarians. And so I've learned and used my math as well to help. I have to calculate how many fluids I need to give to that animal, and so on. So that really comes into play. So you feel like you are a steward in looking after these animals. And it has a trickle-down effect, because we're trained to identify if something is amiss. If we have a lot of sick harbor seal pups, for example, or in this case, a few years ago, 2 years ago, we started to have humpbacks dying off, and now we have what's called an unusual mortality event for humpback whales. You may have heard about all the right whales that died in the Gulf of St. Lawrence this past summer. So we're on the front lines to identify if there's a crisis, maybe there's something amiss in the ocean, maybe there's paralytic shellfish poisoning. Hey, that can affect us too, so we're really on the front lines. And I'll just skip through some of this and just say thanks very much. If you have questions, I'll look forward.